Yesterday, I asked you the question, what is poetry? And you all had good responses to this question. And then I asked you to write this definition in your journal. It says, what is poetry? Poetry is a type of literature or writing that encourages a reader's imagination and attempts to stir emotions. A poet does this by carefully selecting and organizing language for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. Poems influence and affect readers in different ways. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the poet, which is the author of a poem, sets out to write about a topic that they find intriguing, and they do it in a way that helps to give us a picture in our mind and to give us language that we might not normally use, so that it makes us stop and think and say, hang on a minute, I really like the way that sounded. That sounded almost like music flowing whenever I read it out loud. And believe it or not, rhythm is something you learn about in music class because it's like the beat of something. It keeps going at a certain pace. And poetry is used for the lyrics in music. So your favorite song, the author of that song was probably a poet writing musical lyrics, a type of poetry we call lyrical poetry. Okay, so it flows. So poetry is a type of writing that encourages useful organizing language and encourages you to use language that you might not normally use. And that's for its meaning. It encourages an author to use sounds and to give their poem a certain sound so that people might be intrigued by it or be like, I never would have thought of it that way. And then poets also use rhythm to keep their poem moving along so that the reader catches on to the idea that the poet really wanted to convey. So that is what poetry is. Today, we are going to look at something called poetic devices. A poetic device is basically the structure of a poem. It's how a poem is set up. And things like stanza. We know what stanzas are. We've learned those. It's like a paragraph in a poem. A speaker or narrator. That's going to talk about who is telling the story. Today, we're going to learn about tone. We're going to learn about imagery. And we're also going to learn about metaphors. Similes and metaphors are very similar. So I have a song that I want you to listen to about similes and metaphors. But we're going to focus on metaphors today. You'll also learn about personification, alliteration, assonance, hyperbole, and symbolism. Okay? All of these. Oh, and I think we'll also learn onomatopoeia, which is one of my favorites because it's a fun word to say, but it's not on my list. But we'll learn about onomatopoeia as well. So these are called poetic devices. This is how a poet or the author of a poem puts their poem together so that it makes sense to their reader. All right. Yesterday, you wrote the poem Dreams by Langston Hughes in your journal. You're going to need that out today. Make sure that you have it. And I want to talk about a couple of different things in poetry. We're going to start with tone, then move to imagery, and then go to metaphor. I'm going to take out my poem. So this is the poem Dreams, and it's by Langston Hughes. And if you were with me for social studies, we've studied Langston Hughes before. He was a poet, and he was very, very popular and famous during a time period called the Harlem Renaissance. Langston Hughes was a very big writer, and he wrote poetry and all sorts of other things. But today we're actually going to focus on this poem called Dreams I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to talk about it. So here we go. Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. Think about that for a minute. This poem, whenever you hear it, how does it make you feel? How does this poem make you feel? Well, when I think about this poem, it makes me feel almost sad. This poem makes me feel sad. This is how I feel. You might feel differently because we all read things like this differently. We get something different out of it. But when I read it, I think about things like for if dreams die, a broken-winged bird, barren fields frozen with snow. A barren field is an empty field, and it's frozen with snow. Those are kind of cold and not very happy things to think about. So that leads me to talk to you about tone. The tone is the feeling and emotion that a poem conveys to a reader. So when you read something, if you're thinking about it while you're reading it, especially a poem, you should be feeling emotion. Feelings and emotions, those are things like happy, sad, makes you want to think about things. It makes you feel excited, or it makes you feel lonely. That's tone. The tone in a poem is the feeling or the emotion. And an author or the poet can make you feel things based on the words that they choose to use in a poem. So that is tone. That's the emotion and feeling of a poem. Okay? The next one is imagery. Let me read it again. Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for as dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. If I was to ask you to draw a picture of this poem, draw a picture that shows what you see in your head when you hear this poem, what would you draw? I think I would draw a person thinking about something. Like you have the person, and then above them you have like the thought bubble. Let me see if I can come up with something real quick. I might draw a person right? Here they are. And they have a thought bubble going on up ahead of above them. And they're thinking about, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams. Okay. Let's say that your dream was to go to the Olympics. It's saying to hold fast to those dreams. So I really want to go to the Olympics, but if I couldn't, I would be very sad. So that might be a visual that I get thinking about this poem. You could also say, okay, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird. You might draw a bird. I'm not good at birds. Sorry. Might draw a bird. And he's got a broken wing. That's a sad little bird, huh? He's stuck on the ground instead of up in the clouds. So you might draw something like that. a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. This is called imagery. And the poet, the author of a poem, uses certain words to make you visualize or imagine certain things. So imagery is language used by poets, novelists, and other writers to create images in the mind of the reader. Images in the mind of the reader. Imagery, images. They're base words. They go together. Imagery includes figurative and metaphorical language to improve the reader's experience through their senses. We are going to go over what figurative language is. You're also going to learn what metaphorical means today. Metaphorical is a big word for a really cool concept. And then your senses. What are your 5 senses? You have 5 of them. Your 5 senses are see it, taste it, touch, hear, and smell. Those are your 5 senses. You can see it with your eyes, taste it with your tongue, touch it with your fingers, hear it with your ears, or smell it with your nose. Okay, those are your 5 senses. So in imagery, the author or poet is using words to make you think of a certain image in your head, like a broken-winged bird, to help you understand what they're talking about. All right, we have one more to go, and that is a metaphor. In imagery, it says it used metaphorical language. Well, this is what metaphorical or a metaphor is. A metaphor is a comparison of 2 unlike things without using the words like or as. Unlike. That means they are not alike. Okay, unlike means they are not alike. You're comparing 2 things. Let's say I wanted you to compare, compare a bear to the winter. You might say something like, or compare a bear to a person. You might say something like, man, he sleeps like a bear in hibernation in winter. Or he is a sleeping bear in the winter. A sleeping bear in the winter. That is a metaphor, because a person can't be a sleeping bear in the winter. They're a person sleeping in the winter. It just means they're sleeping really hard and deep, like a bear does during hibernation. So a metaphor is comparing 2 things. When you get into the rest of your lesson today, you'll see a video for metaphors. Make sure you click on that one. It's a really good one, and we'll explain metaphor even more. Okay, metaphor. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Something is being compared to something else in that sentence, in that part of this poem. It says, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. So what is being compared? Your metaphor, life, is being compared to a broken-winged bird. That's the metaphor. Life is being compared to a broken-winged bird. Why would the poet say that? Well, right here. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, then life would be miserable. What does it mean to hold fast to something? Well, to hold fast means to not let it go. That's what hold fast means. Okay, I'm hoping you're noticing that I am writing all over my poem today. You have this poem written in your journal. Today you're going to be doing this same thing in your journal. You're going to be thinking about imagery, tone, and metaphors. In your class kick pages, you have questions to answer. You also have the poem in there again, but I want you to record things in your journal and then answer the questions on class kick. You will be making a video, so make sure you have stuff in your journal. I look forward to seeing what you come up with today. And this is something that we are going to repeat over and over because poetry is not always the easiest form of or genre of reading to do, but in order to write it, we need to be able to understand it. So we're going to start here, and we're going to do this over and over until we all understand it, and then we will begin to write our own poems. So for today, you're going to be looking at Dreams by Langston Hughes, and you're going to be looking at imagery, creating an image. You're going to be looking at metaphors, which is a comparison, and you're going to be looking at tone. How does this poem make you feel? All right, I look forward to seeing your work.